Shalom, ladies and gentlemen. I am Avi ben Mordechai, and this is Torah on location from Eretz Israel. Coming up on our program today, we're going to continue our study and look into the numbers of Hebrew Scripture. We're calling this the language of numbers. And in the language of numbers in Hebrew Scripture, there is so much going on with numeric equivalence. And we're going to continue our look at these things next with Torah on location. Join us. Welcome again to Torah on Location. This is Avi ben Mordechai from Eretz Israel. And on this episode of Torah on Location, we're going to now get into the idea of the Gematria of the word Torah. Now here on your screen is the word Torah. This is Tav, Vav, Resh, He. Torah, Tav, Vav, Resh, He. What is the numeric value, the gematria, if you will, for the word Torah? Well, you can add it up yourself. Take a look here on the screen. It is 611. 611. And when you add 6 plus 1 plus 1, you arrive at 8. And we ran into that in a previous program when we were looking at the name Moshe or Moses, which has a numeric value of 345. And when you add that to the numeric value of the divine and holy name in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, the I am that I am, that has a numeric value of 543, which is the exact reverse of Moses' name, 345. 345, reverse it, 543. You add the two together, 543 plus 345, it equals 888. And 888 is all part of this idea of new beginnings, new growth, new life. Thus, the Torah has a numeric value, the word Torah, of 611. 6 plus 1 plus 1 is 8. This is the Torah of life for the body, the soul, and the spirit. 888. It affects us on all three levels: the body, the soul, the spirit. 888. It gives us new life. It gives us new hope. It helps us to grow and to come to life on so many different levels. Okay? Now, with all of that, now let's take a look at this idea of what it means for the Torah to come down. When the divine eternal Torah comes down, it means that we are going up. We're going up to meet the Torah. But in order to go up to meet the Torah, we have to go down in order to go up. You see, you can't elevate yourself in pride and arrogance and say, well, I'm just going to go meet the Torah. Oh no, we have to be prepared. And how do you prepare yourself to meet the Torah? There is one way. You go down. Go into the Ad, into the Aleph Dalet, that we spoke about in the book of Genesis, chapter 2, verse 6. You go down into the mist, go down into the vapor. Recognize that your life is just but a vapor. It's here today, gone tomorrow. We go into the vapor, we go into the Adamah, we go down into the ground, and we fall on our faces, and we say to Yehovah, I am nothing without you. You are the one that waters my soul. You are the one that brings me life. You are the one that makes everything in my life worth living. I go down into the Adamah, and the Torah lifts me up and elevates me. And this brings us to the 888, to the life of the words of the eternal laws and teachings of heaven and earth as taught and presented by Yeshua HaMashiach. Now, with this idea of going down in order to go up, that then leads us into the concept of nullification of the flesh. Now, Paul talked about this a lot in Romans chapters 7 and 8 and many other places. He refers to this idea of the crucifixion of the flesh, the crucifying of the flesh. And Yeshua also is pointing us in the same exact direction. We crucify the flesh with its desires and all of its negative things that come against the holy and divine word of Yehovah. We have to crush the flesh. Now, in order to do that, there is a Hebrew word that helps facilitate that understanding. The Hebrew word that we're looking at is levatel, which means to nullify, to cancel. Now, let's take levatel and let's reduce it down to the term bitul, okay, which is the shoresh or the root for levatel. Bitul, we can spell it beit, tet, vav, lamed. Beit, tet, vav, lamed. That has a numeric value of 47. 47. So now, let's add 47 to another word that we have become very familiar with. The word is echad. Echad is spelled Aleph, Chet, Daled. Aleph, Chet, Daled. Echad. And that has a numeric value of 13. Numeric value of 13, that is, echad is the word that we get one. One in purpose, one in character, one in reason and understanding. One, it's a unification of the number one, echad. So we take echad, one, which has a numeric value of 13. We take 47 and we multiply it times 13, or if you will, 13 times 47. And do you know what that equals? It equals the word Torah. That is 611. If we will die to the flesh, we will live to the Torah. Don't let the flesh control you. You control the flesh. Now, this does not mean that we should become ascetics. Not in the least. It just means we put things in a proper perspective, and everything has its place and its purpose and its role in life. The Ruach runs the flesh. The flesh does not tell the Ruach what to do. The Ruach tells the flesh what to do. And this goes back to Genesis chapter 4, in speaking to Cain or Cain. And what does it say there? Hevel, or Abel, also brought of the firstborn of the flock and their fat. And Yehovah respected Hevel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his face fell. Genesis 4:6. Yehovah said to Cain, why are you angry? Why has your countenance fallen? Verse 7. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over him. Rule over sin. Now, there's a whole lot going on in that statement, because the key here is in the word that they're using in English, at least, for the word desire. The word here in Hebrew is teshukato. It comes from the root, or the shoresh in Hebrew, shuk. Shin, vav, kuf. Shuk. What is a shuk? Well, if you've ever been to Eretz Israel before, you've been to the open market. And the open market has everything to do with what's called the shuk. And the shuk is where all the legs are walking. All the people are moving about in the shuk, the open market, buying things of all different varieties and kinds, including food and clothing and all kinds of things. Okay, that's the shuk. In Genesis 3, verse 16, in speaking to the woman, Yehovah says, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In pain you will bring forth children. Then it says, your desire will be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Oh, don't misunderstand this word, this passage. Don't misunderstand it, because very few people understand the concept that it's coming from the Hebrew word shuk. Here in this passage of Genesis 3:16, it's saying teshukatech. It's saying ve'el ishech teshukatech. That is, toward your husband, women, he will be your legs. Because shuk is a Hebrew word that means a leg. You know, a leg. From the pelvic area down to the ankle. In modern Hebrew, the word shuk is a leg. This is why the word shuk means an outdoor market. Okay? Because at the outdoor market, that's where all the legs are walking. All the people are out shopping in the outdoor market, or the shuk. Thus, ladies, when it says your desire will be for your husband, it means he will be your legs. And why is that the case? Why would it say your husband will be your legs? Because when you go back in the context of Genesis chapter 3, Yehovah is speaking to the serpent, and he says in Genesis 3:14, because you have done this, referring to this dastardly deed to the woman, you are cursed more than all the cattle, more than every beast of the field, and on your belly you will go and eat dust all the days of your life. And this idea of going on the belly clearly implies that the serpent at one point was walking. The serpent had legs, ladies and gentlemen. And since Yehovah curses the Nachash, the serpent, he takes away his legs. He takes away his ability to walk so that he can then deceive the woman. He takes his ability to walk and puts him into the ground and says, you're going to go slithering on the ground. Well, now the woman needs to get around because she needs mobility. And where will her mobility come from? Genesis 3:16 tells us. And Yehovah says to you, your desire, your movement, your mobility will be toward your husband. He'll be your legs and no longer the serpent. And the husband's obligation is in the next part of the verse, where it says, and he shall rule over you. Do you know what this word rule is? Don't misunderstand it. Ladies, it doesn't mean he's a dictator. It doesn't mean he's a tyrant. No, the exact opposite. Because the word rule in Hebrew is moshal. Moshal. Mem, shin, lamed. This is the same exact word that we get the book of Proverbs in Hebrew. Proverbs in Hebrew is called Mishle. Mishle. It's that your husband is to be a spiritual book of Proverbs to you. Not a dictator. Proverbs. And when he's doing his job as the spiritual head to teach you and to teach himself and to walk as a proverb to you, as a book of Proverbs, then he is fulfilling his role as that of sunlight, the greater light. And how do we know that? Because when you go to Genesis chapter 1, it tells us that the greater light was there in the creation to rule the day on the fourth day. It's called the greater light, sunlight. And it says the greater light will rule the day. The greater light will rule the day. And what is the greater light? Ruling. What is ruling? Moshal, mem shin lamed. In other words, the sunlight is there to rule the day, meaning to be an environmental control for the planet Earth, for our environment. So therefore, Yehovah is teaching us that the male's role in the home is to be an environmental control of spiritual dimensions. He, your husband, is a spiritual book of Proverbs to the home. He sets the environmental control. He's the digital control. He sets the temperature at the right temperature so that everyone can grow. Husband, you do your job of setting the environmental control in your home. That's your spiritual duty. And if you don't do it, your wife is going to do it. And there's a role reversal going on because she's doing it and you're acting like a woman and she's acting like the man. You got to turn that around. If you want to be great, you have to be a servant of all. So, in Genesis chapter 1, the sunlight is great, and yet it's a servant of all. Well, how does that apply in everyday life, in marriage? Very simple. What's the word for sun? The sunlight in the sky. What's the word in Hebrew? You know it. Shemesh. Shin, mem, shin. Shemesh. And what's the word for a servant? You know it because you light the menorah, right? Servant is shamash. Shamash. Shin, mem, shin. It's the same word, just different vowel pointing. So, you're the sunlight, you have the environmental control of the home, spiritual, therefore you are the greater light in the home. You are to shine into your wife. You're to shine into your children. You're to shine warmth and sunlight and growth and environmental control. You're supposed to set the environment in your home as the greater light, moshal. And in doing so, you are the shemesh, which means therefore you're the shamash. Because Yeshua said, if you want to be great, if you want to be a great light, you must learn to be a servant of all. And thus, Shemesh must be Shamash. Shemesh must be Shamash. You cannot be Shemesh until you first learn to be Shamash. Then you can be elevated to be Shemesh. And that's what this whole story is of the Torah, the 611. Now, with all this being said, let's take this to a final conclusion and close off our program with this thought. The word SHABBAT in Hebrew, the word SHABBAT in Hebrew is Shin Bet Tav. Shabbat. Shin Bet Tav. Now this is a beautiful word because the word Shabbat is the shoresh, or the root for which we get the Hebrew word leshevet, to sit, leshevet, like I'm sitting teaching in this particular episode of Torah on Location. I'm Shabbating. I suppose you could say it that way. I'm Shabbating in my chair. I'm sitting in my chair, resting in my chair, talking to you. And when you sit down and talk to a brother or a sister or a child or a wife or a husband, when you're sitting and resting, you're Shabbating, for lack of a better term, I guess. You are acting in the role of Sabbath. And what is Shabbat? What's it all about? Shabbat has a numeric value of 702. 702. That's Shabbat. So we are walking around as a Sabbath, a 702. We are all a bunch of 702s everywhere. But isn't it beautiful to realize that the Hebrew word for light, divine light, as it's referenced in the book of Genesis, in the book of Bereshit, is Aleph, Vav, Resh. Aleph, Vav, Resh. This is a divine, eternal, invisible, beautiful, holy light. Now, what value does or have in Hebrew? Add it up yourself. Aleph is 1, Vav is 6, Resh is 200. Thus, 200 plus 6 plus 1 is 207. Ooh, did you see the connection here? You see, 207 is the exact opposite of Shabbat at 702. So here you have Shabbat, 702, and you have or, divine light, at 207. Really? So that means in the Shabbat, there is an embedded divine light of 207. 702 is the outside. It's what we do every seventh day. But deep inside the core of the 702, it's the spiritual energy that holds the Sabbath together. That, my friends, is the 207, the divine light of the book of Genesis chapter 1. Or is 207, which is the light and the core and the energy of everything that makes the Shabbat tick at the spiritual dimensions. So when you keep Sabbath in your home, in your life, in everything that you do every day, you are energizing the divine light of Genesis chapter 1. That is the beauty of the Hebrew Scriptures. And we've only scratched the surface on these things. We'll come back on another episode and let's continue looking at a few more important principles. I don't want to give up on this quite yet. There's just too much to talk about here as we present these ideas for one purpose only: to build your emunah, your trusting faith in the sovereign authority of Yehovah. Start building your emunah. That's what we're doing here. We're going through these things to show you that we serve a powerful, powerful Creator. Don't mess with Him. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for joining me on today's episode of Torah on Location. We'll come back and we'll talk further about these ideas, these emunah, faith, body building, spiritual body building exercises in showing us about our Creator and the divine and holy name and everything about Him. When we come back on our next program, we'll take a look at some aspects of the divine and holy name as it's related to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, and we'll continue with this creation story at the spiritual dimensions. Thanks for being with us today. Be blessed, be strong, walk in trust, walk in truth, walk in faith, believe and accept the word of the Torah in your life and in the life of your family. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you again. And shalom to you and yours.